The one straight in front of me. Yeah. Yeah. Putting it out on air later on. Now you're very welcome along to this Sunday's paper review. Newspapers this weekend absolutely dominated by two men, two managers, one of them on the way in, it looks like, and the other, we're fearing anyway, it looks like he's on the way out. Joe Schmidt. Joining me this afternoon to look through the morning's papers is Tommy Martin of Virgin Media. How are you doing, Tommy?
Very well, Neil. How are you?
And Hugh Farrelly of the Irish Daily Mail. How are you getting on?
And Neil? Grand, thanks.
Good stuff. Well, the paper review is brought to you as usual with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. Now, we have a lot to talk about this weekend, so we may as well get straight into the headlines. And as we've seen so far, it's two men dominating them so far. The picture on the front page of the sports supplement of the Sunday Independent. Conway clips Eagles' wings. It's a picture of Andrew Conway en route to scoring one of his tries in his hat-trick last night. But the two headlines, top and bottom of that: McCarthy to contact Rice as first port of call. Mick McCarthy unveiled today as the new Republic of Ireland senior manager, and his first stop is going to be to stop in and have a chat with the Rices, see what they want to say, and hopefully bring Declan Rice back into the Republic of Ireland setup. And at the bottom, Schmidt begins long goodbye with another victory on Ireland's 57-14 demolition of the USA yesterday. And it's that Joe Schmidt is going to be making his decision very, very soon. We should know in the next couple of days. Also as well on the side there, Harrington targeting Tokyo gold. That's after Kelly Harrington won a fantastic gold medal yesterday at the Women's World Elite Boxing Championships in New Delhi. Her second world medal, adding to the silver she won in Kazakhstan in 2016. It's along similar lines on the front page of the Sunday Times. Jack Conan diving over for his try yesterday. Final flourish. Ireland sign off on glorious year by thrashing USA 57-14, but Schmidt hints at exit. And also then at the bottom of the page, the news that broke last night: Kenny to be unveiled as 2020 successor to Mick McCarthy. That Stephen Kenny, the Dundalk manager, is going to be taking a role with the Irish under-21s with a view to taking over from Mick McCarthy after Euro 2020. Also on the back page of the Irish Daily Mail, Andrew Conway's the picture. They go with Ireland fly by Eagles. Winger Conway scores 3 tries as squad men grab big chance to shine. And also McCarthy, new Ireland boss, but not for long. Stephen Kenny is the heir apparent to Republic of Ireland throne after it was confirmed he'll replace Mick McCarthy as senior manager after the Euro 2020 finals. On the back page of the Sunday World, yes we can. FAI have 2020 vision as they line up Stephen to take over after Mick McCarthy reign ends. And as well as that, Kelly's golden dream. More on Kelly Harrington winning our gold medal yesterday. And as you can see, plenty of reaction in the Sunday World as well to Mick McCarthy and Stephen Kenny's appointment. Paul McGrath, Kevin Moran and Roy Curtis all giving their opinion. A lot of opinion in this weekend's papers. Some good, some bad, and some looking at the FAI in particular as well. Another line of 2020 vision is what they say on the Irish Sun on Sunday today. FAI tell Kenny they see him as man to succeed McCarthy. It's a given if he's keen. Also, they're saying Shay Given is set to join Mick McCarthy's Ireland backroom team. He's expected to come in as a goalkeeping coach, a role he also performs with Derby County. While also there on the side you can see as well, Schmidt set to pull the plug, with Joe Schmidt announcing in the next couple of days what his plans are going to be. The Sunday Mirror go at Manchester United after their scoreless draw against Crystal Palace yesterday in the Premier League. No heart, no desire. Mourinho accuses United flops as Inter prepared to offer troubled Pogba a way out of Old Trafford. So they're saying Jose Mourinho accuses United players of lacking desire and heart as Inter Milan plot a £200 million cash plus players mega deal to land trouble star Paul Pogba. Although I think we've seen quite a few Paul Pogba exit stories in the last while. They don't appear to be going anywhere. And finally, the last one for us today. We can do this. Mac back as Ireland revealed 2020 vision. 2020 vision, that's That's a favourite of them this weekend, I think.
Yeah. Just ban that now, please.
Yeah, they need to ring around and just decide who's going to use it. Mac back as Ireland Real 2020 vision. So Mick McCarthy unveiled today as the new Republic of Ireland manager. And also there at the top, hang on a Mo, Salah copies Ramos celebration. Mo Salah mimicked a Sergio Ramos goal celebration as Jurgen Klopp's Reds kept pace with Man City at the top of the Premier League table yesterday. But Tommy and Hugh, only one place we can really start this weekend, and that is Mick McCarthy, the new Republic of Ireland manager, and a Grand Ole exclusive for the Sunday Independent this weekend because Colin Young has been speaking to him. It seems he was speaking to him before the news of his appointment broke. I think it was just after the news of Martin O'Neill's sacking or resignation emerged on Wednesday.
That's a bit of a weird one because it's tagged as an exclusive interview on the front and then draws you inside. When you read it, it's good now, it's a good read, but it's more of a profile topic, isn't it? It's like, because it turns out that he doesn't really give live quotes there. And then he has a line, I knew what he had to say but not go on the record. McCarthy hates exclusives and would rather share his thoughts with everyone or no one. Exclusive. It's a good read and stuff, but it's more of a profile than...
I think it's, I agree. As Hugh says, it's misleading to think you're going to pick up the Sunday Indo and get Mick McCarthy's manifesto for what he's going to do with Ireland.
Spoke to them Saturday night.
Even the reference to Declan Rice is through, I couldn't quite get a phone call to his scout that he uses, David Bowman, that would be his first call. You know, it's not fleshed out in any way. And Hugh's right, like it is a really good piece. It's actually a good sort of 2 or 3 page spread in terms of if you want to get a sense of different points of view of the story. Like I say, you read Colin Young's obviously very supportive of the appointment of McCarthy and ultimately says the slate could not be cleaner nor Ireland's immediate fate be in better hands. Their future shaped by a proud Irishman who's extremely keen to leave a lasting legacy. Versus Eamon Sweeney's piece to the right of that, which is...
lethal.
Which is pretty lethal. And, as quotes like, instead we're getting Mick McCarthy. He's obviously back in Kenny, should have got the job. Again, written, I'd say, before the news of last night. Instead we're getting Mick McCarthy. Mick McCarthy, are you effing kidding me? So it's like, which is good as you're sitting down to get a whole breadth of views on the story. And
I have found it very interesting this morning reading the papers because obviously it's wall-to-wall coverage of Mick McCarthy across all the papers, and there are so many opinions floating around as to whether he is the right or the wrong man for the job. It seems to be the former players are the ones saying this is a really good appointment. We can do very well with this. While it seems to be a lot of the journalists themselves are the ones questioning it. I
think definitely anybody who's any personal experience with Mick McCarthy are the ones who are for it, and like that you can argue that 2 ways. Are those people who he's my mate and I'm gonna back him anyway, or those people who kind of have a bit of a deeper sense of his career as a whole and the challenges he had, the successes and the challenges he had through all that, and then the ones who are really against it, maybe ones who have a sort of allegiance to the League of Ireland and saw Kenny as the messiah figure that would unite the Irish game in a new model. Like if I could sort of all the pieces during the week in the various think pieces and commentators and people trying to get a sense of it into one sort of nutshell, is that pretty much everyone said this should be an opportunity to fix the deeper problems of Irish football. That it's not just about getting a magic man to come in and weave a spell as manager and get us back to singing ole 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 every 2 years. It's can we look deeper? Can we look at the FAI? And maybe how things are run there. So all that's kind of getting played out with what appears to be the final decision, which is a little bit of everything to keep everyone happy.
Is that not a well thought out process in its own way? Like move Kenny to the 21s and then bring him through in time? I mean, or do you think that's just a sop?
I think I've I don't want to, it's obviously there's a sense of forward planning in it. So, how can you be against that? Like it's the exact sort of thing that we've been,
complaining,
criticising that it's all, oh my God, another manager gone. We have a big long-winded process. But to me, it seems like making the wrong decision for the right reasons. It's like it's almost like the FAI had 2 candidates, didn't really want either of them enough, so decided to give them both the job. Firstly, I'd love to know what Mick McCarthy's initial reaction to it was. you're going to be out of a job in 2 years' time, no matter even if you win the World Cup. And this sort of sense of plotting the future 2 years down the line, like in life, sport, especially. I mean, from the moment he is officially unveiled, you're starting a chain of reaction of events and twists and turns and defeats and scandals and spats and all that. We've no idea in 2 years' time where the state of Irish football is going to be in, and to sort of say that this is going to be a progression plan 2 years out, like, to me, it's, I don't know, it's a little bit optimistic to kind of...
More than anything, does it just hammer home the importance of getting to Euro 2020, of having the party in our house and potentially not being there. They want the experience hand, the steady hand on the till for a couple of years, and after that, give Stephen Kenny a chance. Let's go into the unknown a little bit after that, but for the immediate 2 years, they just want to make sure they know what they're doing.
It's like the FAI want their Gareth Southgate, and they want Stephen Kenny to be their Gareth Southgate, but to do that, they've made Mick their Sam Allardyce. and it's almost like I don't want to be too harsh, because I do think there is a lot of good in this, and I read some of the pieces. I think Paul Rowan and various pieces have said he's going to have a role overseeing the development on the under 15 to under 19 age group, as well as managing the 21s. That's all good stuff. Let's be positive about that, because that's what we want to see, kind of joined up thinking. It's just this whole, we know what the atmosphere around the Irish football team is like. We know it's live line, it's off the ball, talking about it, like teasing it out. Like, there's 2 years of this to sort of get ourselves into the headspace where in 2 years' time we think we know what's going to happen and it'll all make sense. I don't know. I just think it's a long way in the future to be making decisions when we don't really know anything about what happens if Mick McCarthy gets us to the quarterfinals of the World Cup. Sorry, Mick, you step away. I'd love to. I think first thing today is to hear what he thinks about it. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be really interesting.
Now, you would have worked with him a lot in the last couple of months, doing TV work, doing Champions League, doing Nations League, and everything like that. You got the impression that he was waiting for the right job to come up.
I think he was waiting for the right job to come up.
Do you think he anticipated the Irish job would be coming up?
I think he was well aware that there was a very good possibility that he was in the front running for it, and I don't know, that's why he wanted to do media work over here. And
even in the piece, just to interrupt, Colin Young kind of quotes him as saying that he's at this event in Sunderland during the week, this kind of, I don't know, it was an after dinner talk or something, but he kind of said to the crowd, if I don't get it now, I never will.
Yeah. I think definitely Mick did some different things this time, and it's in Colin Young's piece in the Sunday Indo, and he said it to us as well. He kind of he knows that the game has changed, that he never, in the short periods out of work in his managerial career, he had never before had an agent working for him as somebody making the first calls to chairman when somebody was getting sacked, or somebody looked like they were getting sacked. And he wasn't one of these guys who went around hanging around, directors' boxes when a manager was in trouble. He's very, was always very honourable about that side of it. He'd never done that thing before, essentially canvassing for himself. But this time around, he kind of accepted, look, I think he's 59 years old, 26 years in management. A lot of foreign owners come in, don't necessarily know who Mick McCarthy is, and maybe are looking at, a guy with a laptop who, is, employs gig and pressing, and, is a lot sexier an appointment to bring in than, plain old Barnsley Mick McCarthy, despite his track record. So this time he employed an agent to put his name out there, and I think the media work he probably accepted was part of that, keeping his face out there and letting people know he was still about. And I think there were jobs that came up. Aston Villa, his name was mentioned, and again you saw there foreign owners wanted a different approach. Younger coaches come through. Dean Smith got that, and John Terry's involved. And I think he always thought that this might come up, but he really, really honourable. And I would I turned to him after the 4-1 game in Wales, and the first thing I said to him was, "Mick, when can you start?"
Yeah.
And I was obviously joking, but he was just squirt. He was really uncomfortable with that because he's a football man and he'd hate to see.
Doesn't want to step on the toes of another manager.
Yeah, he's been the guy under pressure, and it would kill him to see somebody else out there, angling for his job. He never wanted to be seen to be angling for O'Neill's job. Yes, I'm sure he was aware of the practicality that he knows the game well enough to know that he was going to be one of the contenders. So yeah, but I just think it's going to be interesting to hear what his reaction. I think he's a very honourable guy, and I think maybe he's also 1.2 million reasons a year for the next 2 years to accept the current setup. I think maybe, did he say, look, if that's what you think, if it's for the good of Irish football.
Do you think those negotiations lasted long?
No.
With a contract that size,
No.
I can't imagine Mick went in saying, "I'd like 2 million a year, please," and they wiggle their way all the way down to 1.2.
Well, I'd say his representative said, "You've been paying Martin O'Neill how much? Right, we'll have that, please." And the FAI, "Oh, come on," and that negotiation happened, and that's the reality of what the FAI did with their previous appointments. They're always going to be in a weak negotiating position now, so I think fair play to Mick for getting that.
Mm-hmm. But there are a few people questioning, for an organisation that we've seen is fairly cash-strapped at the best of times, that we're overpaying quite a lot for talent.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well, we're overpaying in terms of, we're one of the top paying managerial, and certainly under Trapp and O'Neill, one of the top paying managerial jobs in Europe. The FAI's answer to that is, well, we're going to employ world-class talent. The problem we have, I think, as well, is that we're essentially in the English market, and we're sort of in that general gene pool, and we know that wages are totally inflated in there.
Wasn't Ryan Giggs on 600,000 with Wales? Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, and the argument there is Giggs' his first job in football. I mean.
So Kenny would have been the much cheaper option.
But no doubt. Let's not have no mistake about it. The FAI have inflated the wages of their managerial appointments with Trapp and O'Neill. I didn't quite realise this. One of the pieces today said they doubled O'Neill's salary with the recent negotiations, just the deal that was signed after the Stoke City flirtation, which I'm not sure if that's completely correct, but it certainly seems he seems to have gotten a bump up. And I just think, in terms of the salary, they're paying the price for overpaying over the last decade now.
Any other pieces in the Sunday papers about the FAI, the Martin O'Neill, the Mick McCarthy situation that did stand out for you?
Delaney gets a kicking from Tommy Conlon. Again, which is, I always enjoy Tommy Conlon's pieces. In fact, just on you said it yourself, as Tommy said as well, it's a great day for Sunday papers. I have my newspaper hat on now, papers are struggling, but there's just so much reading in them.
And for the most part, it's two stories.
Yeah, but there's great balance.
There's fantastic reading in them.
There's fellas having swipes, there's fellas backing, there's good writing, it's just really good meat. And Tommy's piece on John Delaney is very entertaining, which is the main goal. He has the line, he's reaching levels of toxicity, last reserve for the likes of Bertie Ahern, Brian Cowan, and various bankers such as Sean Fitzpatrick, Michael Figgleton, David Drum, which, is a bit extreme. But I think the Delaney thing, Tommy's raising the point that maybe he's trying to keep people happy with this kind of stuff. But coming from the rugby side, I find Delaney fascinating, because the equivalent in rugby is Philip Brown in the RFU, who you could not meet a more composed, dignified. You see videos and stuff of Delaney on the lash with fans, and having been on tour with Ireland, and Philip Brown might come down to the bar, have one drink, and go. He just always carries himself and he's in charge of a very successful organisation. And the one time there was a bit of grief was the ticket prices when the Aviva reopened, and they immediately stepped in and sorted it. So I think the Delaney situation is he's trying to ride it out and stay there.
Yeah, I think Tommy Conlon has quoted the increase in the time that Delaney has been chief executive, the increase in turnover of the rival organisations. Just maybe the previous page there. In 2006, GA turnover at central level was 30 million. By 2017, it jumped to 65.6. IRFU from 48 million to 85 million. and the FAI turnover in 2007 was 45 million. By 2017 it was 49 million. In other words, the IRFU and GAA have raced ahead of the FAI in terms of financial performance over the last decade, and yet the CEO of the worst performing organisation is paying himself by far the most money. And Paul Rowan goes with the same, again, you talk about all the different angles and things, and like you can't cover this story without covering the governance and the FAI and the John Delaney aspect of it. And he's talked about the atmosphere and the protests in Denmark, the atmosphere among the fans, the confiscation of the banners in Denmark, which just seems so heavy-handed and ludicrous. And how can you have the authority, because it's political apparently?
Political message,
political message. And he quotes Liam Brady's line during the week. I think it was in the Examiner. He said, "We've had 15 years of John, and I think the only progress is that John's career has gone up and up." And he then twisted into the angle of the oversight from the Oireachtas, which is Catherine Murphy of the Social Democrats wanted Delaney brought in before the committee, the Oireachtas Committee on Transport, Tourism and Sport, to answer questions about the payoff for O'Neill and Keane, said to run to 7 figures, and whether it will eat into funds for the grassroots of the game. In other words, where is the scrutiny of a 7-figure sum being essentially paid to compensate for a mistake made?
Well, where is the scrutiny, Tommy? Who makes the call on Delaney? Like, who's his overseer?
He's answerable to the FAI board. I think that's fair to say. And the charge made by some people, and he also has, he presents his case to the FAI AGM every year, and the charge by some people is that both of those neither of those particular bodies particularly have teeth when it comes to really scrutinising his performance. I think Daniel McDonnell had a piece in the Indo during the week about, and actually Paul Rowan points out the whole issue of raising the age limit for the board members to 75, at which time, as and when they win.
Yeah, and I think Brian Kerr was
the same guys
was saying earlier in the week that in the 15 or 20 years that have passed, the board looks quite similar to what it did a couple of decades ago.
I can't remember the numbers, but certainly the majority of the board that was there when Stan was sacked, I think certainly a good chunk of them are still there. And look, that's the criticism. I'm sure if John Delaney was sitting here, he would argue forcibly at lots of positive things that he'd say, qualifications for 2 tournaments and different development plans put in place, and I'm sure he has a list of things where you can defend what he's done, but there's a lot of stuff in the papers today turning the heat on him. And the last time that this came up in terms of the Oireachtas side of things, you might remember, was the infamous, and Paul Rowan goes into this, the infamous 5 million paid from FIFA to the FAI over the Thierry Henry handball incident. That there was I remember at the time there was it was thought that he was going to be called in to the committee to answer about that, but that allegedly there was a ring around done by people on behalf of the FAI and Delaney to the members of the committee, basically saying, no, there's no need for this. This was, this is not public money's not involved here. You're barking up the wrong tree here. A young TD at the time, Brendan Griffin, described Delaney's lobbying as a very dangerous precedent. Griffin is now the sports minister in Shane Ross's department, so is ideally placed to get a grip on some of those vexed questions regarding the distribution of public money to sporting bodies such as the FAI. I mean, and the other thing is, the last time he was up in front of the committee, it was just a general sort of, I think the 3 chief executives, I think Pádraig Duffy, Philip Brown and Delaney, just a general, like, how are you getting on, lads, type thing, here's what we're at. He was basically, chaired out of the place on show, and it was after Euro 2016, and I think there was one of the TDs said, well, there's not much to really question you about, John. I think, everything's going so well, so fair play and all that, so that's scrutiny there, so...
The other target in soccer terms is the Robbie Keane appointment. I think Eamon Sweeney again goes the strongest, using it as a way to have a go at Roy Keane as well. This kind of celebrity,
third time lucky.
The celebrity sidekick issue, We've just spent 5 years watching one underemployed Keane hanging around like a spare PRIC at a wedding. We don't need another. Robbie Keane's main role would be to provide comic relief at press conferences, but this joke isn't funny anymore. So I don't know. I mean, I think it'd be popular with supporters though. Robbie Keane, he's adored. But after the Roy Keane and Dave Snay talks about, and the Mail talks about the damage done to the Roy Keane brand or image from his, largely inconsequential time as number 2 to O'Neill, and that people aren't expecting much in the papers today anyway of Robbie's direct impact on the situation.
Is having him there though quite helpful, because obviously Ireland have probably lost a good few players in the last few years through retirements and such, but Robbie Keane would still know quite a lot of those players in the squad quite well. Just having that link between management and players, considering what we've seen, the relationship was between management and players last time round, with some of the stories that we heard about Roy Keane.
Go between.
Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly think he'd be improvement on his on the other Keane was there. I don't think he'd be bollocking anybody out of it for getting a massage.
It's a media thing as well, because if you had someone, I don't know, modern equivalent of Morissette, is a kind of not a big figure doing press conferences. Like when Roy Keane did press conferences, you had the beard, he was back page, big pictures inside. He's very cool.
They were arguably more popular than Martin O'Neill's press conferences.
Much more so. It was, Roy Keane's box office. Whatever he's done and all that, he's news all the time. And Robbie Keane wouldn't be as incendiary, but he'd come close to that. Whereas if you had, I don't pick a name off the top of my head, Mark Kinsler or someone more.
Yeah, well, Terry Connor it seems Mick's long-serving assistant at Ipswich, and before that at Wolves, looks like he's going to be the assistant manager. He ain't going to be doing too many.
He's not back page.
Yeah.
It's like, there's certain names always go on the back page. Roy Keane's one of them, Brian O'Driscoll, Katie Taylor, thankfully, Tiger Woods. And he's definitely that. So Robbie would have to equate that and up the profile.
Just the thing as a whole, the way it's panning out now, it just seems to me we have a series, and we've cornered the market. We have a bottomless pit of, crazy twists and turns in the national team, but we also have a series of really quirky managerial appointments to our international team. When you go back to the Stan and Bobby Robson thing, which was like the legendary player, never but assistant coach at Walsall, and then this international consultant tacked on to that. And
it just so happened to be a managerial darling that everyone loved.
The trap thing, which was, mad and great, to get, but kind of like, where has this come from? This figure from basically the Valhalla of management comes in, and then a bit of Liam Brady in there and all that. O'Neill, and then the bad cop, bring in Roy, redemption thing, and let's soothe the Saipan stuff, and O'Neill's quirky this, and Roy will bring that in the press conferences. And then this one,
the second coming.
This is just another plot. This is like House of Cards. It's like Series 5, and you're just like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this stuff anymore. But to me, it's like Hugh says, every step along the line, and maybe it's because the international team funds the games to such an extent and needs to be, and that's all based on people being excited enough about it to want to go and buy their season tickets and generate the positivity and the kind of like ole atmosphere around it, that every appointment needs to have this little sparkle of like, we'll get a bit of that. It's, people use the word dream ticket because it's put together, and the Robbie Keane aspect, he's completed his badges, and he coached one game with Atletico Kolkata, won it and scored a goal. So, 100% record.
It's all about the win ratio in modern management.
Yeah, exactly. So it is definitely that kind of like, let's put a bit of sparkle of sawdust here and then sell it out there. I'm not quite getting my head around the whole succession plan thing, but there is a little bit of that as well. Is about keeping constituencies happy, and but I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt, because I think there's good in it, and there's it's either the right thing for the wrong reasons or the wrong thing for the right reasons.
There's lessons to be learned here as well. I mean, I think possibly the most surprising aspect of the whole thing was the Martin O'Neill Stoke stuff. Like after that, to my mind, he was dead man walking. He clearly showed it wasn't his priority. He had the whole Tony O'Donoghue stuff, which didn't do him any favours. And it's not about poor leaguer journalists. It's about putting across a positive image, or stardust, as Tommy says. And surely they've learned from that now. That I couldn't believe. I know the soccer media and other sports too, they tend to move in packs. People take the same. They all turned on Trapp around the same time. But I was surprised that O'Neill didn't get more of a kicking over the whole Stoke situation, because to me that was just good luck. So I think they should have to learn from that experience with McCarthy.
That, to me, I would say, in terms of what O'Neill achieved Euro 2016, even after the World Cup thing, you're kind of going, okay, the football's been rubbish, but it was one bad night. We were one game away, by whenever Shane Duffy scored early in that game, we were going to the World Cup finals at that stage, and then of course it went drastically wrong. But the Stoke thing, to me, offering that contract after that was a fatal mistake. It was a really bad call in terms of by the FAI. And I agree with you. I think that probably fed into the general atmosphere around
and
the team.
I think we're back to the media thing as well, but this is a good forum for us. Like, they need to push personalities in the team too, don't they? Like, it's very vanilla. There's no one stands out. Obviously back in the glory days, you had characters everywhere from McGrath, Townsend, all these guys. But at the moment, Callum O'Dowda, Jeff Hendrick could walk into a bar and still organ and no one recognise them. It feels that way. There's no one. Do they need to push them out more in the Irish market rather than, because they just come over, they give harmless, we're under no illusions quotes, and people don't identify with them. That's what it feels like anyway.
But I suppose that's the bigger problem. That, and the UK, I think somebody was talking about Sunday Supplement this morning, and they're all back in O'Neill and saying like he was dealing with a lot of rubbish there. Like,
they're only seeing the bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, but like, we don't have really any stars anymore. Like, Seamus Coleman's probably our highest profile player,
and Robbie Brady would be the personalities. But even Coleman, like, he's very admirable.
Yeah.
But that ad he does, come to the shop. It's kind of it's hard. Yeah. You're not going to be releasing Christmas singles, like.
Say nothing about the Donegal accent, okay?
Oh, sorry, yeah. No, I like Coleman's very likable. Yeah. He's a good figurehead, but more.
But I think there's that side of it that we don't have. In terms of, look at what the Premier League is now, and the global stars are over there, and that match attacks cards all over my house, and it's all De Bruyne and this and Salah that, and Harry Kane, and it's such a star-driven market, and our guys just aren't punching through in there in terms of what you're talking about.
Do you collect match attacks? No.
Yeah. My son collects them. But to be honest, the whole thing of all we ask is that that question: are we getting the best out of what we have? And I think these players, they're they just come across as these bewildered sort of lambs, because frankly, that's what they've been going out on the pitch as. If you get somebody in who tells them what, we're going to talk about Joe Schmidt in a bit in terms of players being given jobs, given roles to do, knowing exactly what their jobs is, and a lot of the former players you were talking about earlier say that Mick McCarthy does that, so please God that'll happen. Suddenly they'll look like, they'll look like purposeful, footballers that are representing Ireland in the international stage really well. Like, in fairness, they did, in Euro 2016, and there was plenty bandwagon and love for them back then. And I think that's just the bottom line. Get it right on the park. You'll suddenly find like we're a lot more interested in Robbie Brady's sort of personality traits and
I do. Tommy's slightly deflated me, but I think it's going to be. I think it's buzzing over. I think the press conference today will be brilliant. He's going to come out. People like him. I think it's just a fresh air. I think it's. I'd be.
But about the lame duck aspect, though, I mean, in terms of politics, I'm thinking of. It's like Tony Blair and Gordon Brown all over again. Like, if Mick McCarthy does well in Euro 2020, is Stephen Kenny going to be like Gordon Brown sitting there going, well, "You're supposed to step aside"?
Yeah, this was meant to end.
Or on the other side is going to be the lame duck thing, where players are kind of going like, "Oh, you're only here for a couple of years anyway."
It's not set in stone, though, is it? Like, it's up. It can be reviewed.
Yeah, nothing. Well, I suppose nothing's set in stone until we officially get what's going to happen. I think today is going to be really revealing. Like, I just can't wait to see what McCarthy's taken is going to be like. And is it a case that he said like, "I'm just going to do my bit for 2 years," or are we going to get any flicker of "I'm not really sure about this"? And I just. Really interested to see how he...
Well, Ahmed, I think we're going to take a quick break. Coming up next, we'll talk about another manager who may or may not be leaving in the next year or so. That is Joe Schmidt. Stay with us.
I left a cup of water out there, Neil. I'm just going to grab it.
We've spoken about Mick McCarthy and Stephen Kenny so far, and I think it's time now to move on to another Irish international manager, Joe Schmidt. Hugh, you were at the Aviva last night for the USA game, and afterwards I think Joe probably gave the most telling line so far as to how he's leaning with his decision whether or not to stay on. I'll just read it out here. That's all I've got to say on it. It might be frustrating for you guys, but it's really wrecking my head. They've said, the IRFU have said, don't be rash. If you change your mind, we'd love you to continue that conversation. Or if you change your mind, we don't need to have a conversation. If we just continue as we are, that's great.
Yeah, there was a prevailing mood last night was that he's gone. It wasn't even up for debate. All the body language, all the, the quotes, as you said there, he's given an indication. Now, he didn't say categorically, obviously, and it was funny, actually. He's supposed to be meeting his family for brunch today, and there was lads kind of, where'd he go? Like, outside the window. I think somebody even asked him as he was leaving. But yeah, look, it looks like it's a done deal that he's going with an announcement due, they were saying, probably tomorrow morning. So it's a tough one, I mean, I was saying to you outside, the interesting thing I see in it is people who are maybe more removed from Joe. What will we do now? But the guys who are on the daily beat are slightly kind of, I think his attitude towards the media is very intense, and I think they're exhausted. So there's kind of like almost, we get a fresh start here, a new voice. They don't want a new voice kind of thing. But overall, there's great coverage on it today on the whole overview picture, and what comes across is how much he's going to be missed, what he's done, but also what he's left in place. Shane McGrath's gone through his, everything he's achieved and how he's done it.
There are some very good kind of from there to here pieces.
Yeah, which
in
is
the papers.
Actually Brendan Fanning is on that as well, and Brendan's done the Bible on the transition from. It's a brilliant book from amateur to professional in the 90s, because a lot of rugby exploded in 2000. A lot of people weren't aware of what was there before, and Brendan's touches on that again. He goes back to the 1992 tour to New Zealand when we nearly beat them in the Carisbrook, I think it was, Ronnie Carey, if he caught a ball. I think Vince Cunningham scored 2 tries, totally against the run of play, total shock.
Having been demolished in the warm-up game a week before.
Yeah, they were hammered by Auckland. It was Neville Furlong, that was when he got his couple of caps, the late Neville Furlong, and he played the second test then on one leg, and it was just a weird time. The 90s was a weird time for Irish rugby, and both Shane and Brendan go through, Shane in the Mail, about how professionalism suited Ireland. We had the provinces in place, so we had the structure there for it. And Schmidt came in and raised the bar, and I'd always be accused of being a Declan Kidney defender who gets, his legacy is pretty much dismissed now, because he's not the same type of coach. But Kidney would say back in his time off the record how frustrated he was by the system in that it didn't all pull together, which is why you had the Madigan situation not getting his game with Jimmy Gopper there, all that kind of stuff. And what Schmidt has done with New Sephora, in fact, Shane refers to coaches having to justify their selections and stuff to committee men, which was existing only up to a few years ago. Go along to a couple of Blazers and having to say why I've picked, this guy on the wing or whatever. But what Schmidt has done has channeled everything up towards the national team. And the key point there, which Shane goes into, is David New Sephora coming in as lead performance director, and he's taking a ruthless approach. But we're seeing the benefits of it. I mean, the Ruan Pinar one is the most obvious example. People,
a couple of years ago, we were crying foul about it.
Yeah, I mean, the pieces that were coming out at the time were, what about his kids? They were born in Belfast, all this kind of stuff, and that was small-minded stuff. I mean, John Cooney, we see how well he's done, and how he's come, and that kind of centred approach has driven the whole thing to the point where now I know there's been a lot of talk this week. I saw the Hugh McKenna stuff about overhyped and all this kind of stuff. But first of all, when you're writing that stuff, you're trying to sell papers again. I go back to that. But also, it's based on visual evidence. I mean, what we saw against the All Blacks, they beat them in every department. It was clinical. The All Blacks showed up it wasn't, you couldn't use the Chicago excuse of being minus players and on the jolly, and they were schooled, and that makes you think on this basis, the World Cup is possible.
What about Francis' point in his piece, Neil Francis' argument that we're in bother when he goes because of just the sheer genius of the man?
Well, how do you follow that for a start? Now, the RFU have come out and said, which I think Frano references, there's a lot of indispensable people in the grave, or that line that Philip Brown came out with. But actually, Frano I always start off with Neil Francis, which I think he's a very good writer, and he's the line of the day when he says, when Joe Schmidt dies and isn't resurrected on the third day, don't worry, he'll have it figured out on the fourth. And I have to say now, and I don't, as I say, I'm a big Francis fan. I'm glad he's writing about rugby, because there's been a couple of weeks that he's gone off on
straight off
Gaza Strip, was it, and Rodney King and
Kaepernick stuff was.
Yeah, but he's excellent. Yeah, you're right, Neil. He says that how do you, following that, he's a miner of talent to persuade. You're a man with integrity, resilience and resolve, a man with burning desire who embraces hard work, a man who insists you buy into him before you buy into his vision. That's very hard to replicate. Now, the word again around the campfire is that it's Andy Farrell's job, that he will graduate into
what would your thoughts be on that? Is that the logical choice?
Well, in terms of continuing the systems and all that, personally, I'd love to see Leo Cullen and Stuart Lancaster in there. Now, people would say Leo's not been mentioned at all, but I mean, he's done a wonderful job at Leinster. People think it's too soon, but why not try and replicate that at international level? Because Lancaster is just a superb coach, and Cullen gives him the opportunity just to get on with it, and he would do the front of house stuff. I don't see Lancaster doing head coach job again. Not with Ireland, but the Andy Farrell thing, Farrell as head man, he's quite a fiery character. You wonder how that will play out, but I mean, the players, huge respect for him. He's done an amazing job, So
has it helped in a way? I don't know. Personally, I've noticed maybe in the last year or so that Joe Schmidt probably has got a little bit better at delegating the jobs out.
Yeah, we saw that when he didn't go over to Chicago, but he trusted Simon Easterby as well. He has a good coaching team there. In fairness, yeah, he has those out, and maybe the systems are now so entrenched that it could be carried on. I just think, as Neil Francis says, you would be a bit nervous about being able to replicate what he's done, because it's been phenomenal.
If he does announce tomorrow morning that, guess what, guys, I've signed a new contract, is that up there with Kaiser Soze in terms of pulling the wool over all of our eyes?
From what you say, and the daily rugby journalists would be like, oh God.
I don't want to be too harsh on that, because obviously the success is is obviously good, but he's obsessive about the media. He reads everything, and you just feel like I as I said, I haven't been on the beat for a few years. I'm kind of dipping my toe in again, but I do remember, and I really liked Joe. I used to have a bit of a relationship with him when he was in charge of Leinster. I always remember doing a small story. It was before a Champions Cup game, or Heineken Cup game at the time, and Cian Healy was ruled out injured. So it was going to be Jack McGrath's first start, and I just a small few powers in the paper, and I had a phone call from Schmidt afterwards saying, why are you helping the opposition? Why are you telling the team? And you're trying to explain, Joe, I don't work for you, kind of thing. He's really nice about it, but that's the way his mind thinks. He wants everything putting together down to the nth degree, So
that's been the collision point with the media under Schmidt. Yeah. And again, the public couldn't give two hoots about this in terms of what are you crying about? But that whole thing of why aren't you putting for the team? Because wasn't there in 2015 World Cup, there was a big spat over, was it Robbie Henshaw was injured, and that line was put out because somebody saw him in the team lobby of the team hotel on a crutch or something. And
I think it happened with Jared Payne once or twice as well.
Yeah, and he just couldn't understand, why aren't you guys pulling for the team? Why aren't you, we all
there's
together?
A kind of an almost naivety there, and not in the RFU. I mean, they're going on about, we want to speak directly to the fans through platforms, which isn't, that's just happy clappy stuff. You need proper analysis. And as Brendan Fanning says in his piece, he does get a soft ride. He shouldn't care what's being said about him, because you keep winning. There's nothing too critical. It was funny. I was saying before last night there was a bit of a focus on the Darren Sweetenham substitution. It became quite, tense almost, kind of, we demand the truth. Was it a tactical kind of thing, or was it an injury? Schmidt said it was injury, but there was a lot of conspiracy theories going on about that. And I don't know, these kind of sideshows, the overall picture is so positive. You should get away from the sideshows, because as Tommy says, the public could not give a hoot if there's a standoff with the media, or if they're not getting access, or if there's a protest.
Is that the control freak in him, that he like any little aspect that could be contributing negatively, or does he have a bigger focus than that he's sometimes given, that somebody said about him, on psychological aspects around how the team mindset? The way with Joe, it's always like, oh no, they don't care about, we're going to get revenge on the All Blacks and all this kind of like paper talk, stuff, the kind of fluff around it. It's all about processes. Go in and do your processes, but actually, he does really think about all the psychological war games around it, or certainly not letting any negative stuff. Stuff around injuries and
but like on the psychological stuff, we saw it against the All Blacks. When you have his processes, as you say, married to the traditional boot, bollock and bite fire, it's irresistible. You have to have the two together. But he does obsess about all that thing. The rugby writers had their annual bash on Wednesday night. Now that used to be, going back to the days of Sean Diffley and Nevin Nesbitt, that used to be everyone sit around, loosen the ties and, sing Mac the Knife till 4 a.m, players, coaches, the whole lot. Now it's got to the stage where they cruised in, took their pictures for their awards and left again without even having a bite to eat. That's how removed it is now from the media thing. So it's just an aspect of his analysis intensity. Look, it's working, and who's to say it's not?
Just one little interesting thing. I remember a Leinster and Ireland player telling me around the time of the Chicago thing about how this whole one game at a time where we're not thinking about, and it's all very much processed. But that Joe actually did use a lot of stuff like, you guys can be the first Irish team to beat the All Blacks, or you can be the first Leinster team to do this, or you can, become make three European Cups in a row. That he did actually set those little,
historical landmarks.
Which we don't really hear, because if you sit in a press conference with a Leinster or Ireland player and says, back-to-back Six Nations, how would you go for that? It says, no,
we're only thinking about
today. No, we don't focus on that as a, and
you almost tried to do the accent there.
But it's interesting if you push it ahead to what he does next, because I think Brendan talks about it, Brendan Fanning in the Sindo. Like, if he goes into the New Zealand environment, like the scrutiny there.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I thought it was really, because I watched, I don't know, did you watch on Amazon Prime? They had that All or Nothing All Blacks kind of mini documentary series, and in large parts it was enjoyable enough. There wasn't anything, hugely revealing in it, or you didn't see the dark secrets or what really makes them great. But I did find a lot of interesting stuff specifically around Steve Hansen and just the scrutiny he's under. There's a part in one of the episodes where he's out in the back garden with his wife, and they're literally there with wood, hammers and nails, raising the fences in their garden, so the photographers and paparazzi can't be shooting them while they're out sipping their coffee in the morning,
And I wonder what the conversation there is around, are you helping the team? It's like, we're all obviously completely bonkers All Blacks fans, but the point I want to make about, and without wanting to bring it back to the soccer situation too much, there's a kind of a running thread since last Saturday in the All Blacks win, and things going pear-shaped for O'Neill and the managerial saga there. It's like, to what extent can you say, look at what the rugby is doing, and look, it's pure, it's pure. Every radio DJ and current affairs people, the way they kind of say, well, sure, look at the rugby's flying and the soccer's in the doldrums, and it's kind of like such an easy parallel to make. So to what degree do you go, two different industries, it's apples and oranges, you can't compare the way this sport is organised with that sport, stop it, it's just, you're just being, it's just an easy thing to do. Or to what extent is it actually in people's heads that, like, I'm looking at this one thing on the Viva last Saturday, and it's unbelievably professional. Those players are given the best possible chance to win. They are, it's best practice in every possible way that you can imagine in that industry. And then it's impossible for people not to look at the other thing and look and kind of say, this is just,
There's a bitterness there as well. After the All Blacks, there was a lot of stuff on social media about, it's only a friendly and blah, blah, blah. We have to put up with, like, heroes and all this kind of stuff. which is quite nasty, you know. I mean,
it's so self-defeating for Irish football to have that attitude. I just don't get why they can't say, okay, they are completely different industries, but there are things that you can learn about player development, and you know, okay, you're never going to stop a kid going at 16 to the UK, but you can look at some of the things and the way that rugby has organised itself, and you can take bits from it. And you know,
the way rugby's organised, like the way the RFU go about their business, is a lesson for the FAI, I think. And you're talking about player development. The school system is like is ridiculous. Like the amount of talent it's producing. Now I think a bit of it's historical because, you know, rugby's tradition or history in Ireland is elitist, fee-paying schools. You know, and it's, you know, the guy in the wax jacket with the flag and the sheepskin coat, all that stuff. Like, and that's all valid, and there is still a good bit of that out there, but it's changing. You know, the likes of Tyke Furlong, all these guys are coming through, but I think that maybe drives up the jealousy and resentment. But they are showing at the FAI the way, I think, of the way they go about their business.
I think Irish football fans want to go and see, you know, see something that looks professional, looks like best practice, and looks like in Northern Ireland they're never going to win the European Champions or the World Cup, but their fans go along and they see this is a well-organised team, a structure where Michael O'Neill is also Chief Technical Officer of the FAI. It's all joined up and they're getting the best out of very scant resources, much you know, scarcer resources than we have. And you know, you talk about the class thing. It's not about us. It's not about us trying to persuade St. Michael's and Blackrock to take up soccer and do what they're doing with rugby. It's about saying, right, you know, these schools are doing well because they have the benefit of financial resources to invest, and these schools have become mini academies. How do we do that with soccer? Right, maybe it is what they're doing with the League of Ireland underage leagues and trying to make each club a centre of excellence. But that is going to take investment. It is going to take money. It is going to take Irish football being as financially well-oiled comparatively as these rugby development pathways have been, and trying to take some of the good bits from that, where young players are getting their education, their strength and conditioning, their elite training, and their competition against other elite players as all part of their development.
Okay, well, we are running out of time. There are a couple more little bits we might just hit on before we finish up. Kelly Harrington is all over the papers as well. There, probably, I think you mentioned, Hugh, the one you liked the most was Eamon Sweeney again. We've brought him up a few times today, but he does have a piece, and it's mentioning two Harrington women at probably different ends of their career. One being Kelly Harrington winning gold yesterday, and the other being Jessica Harrington, the racing trainer.
Yeah, no, I just think on a general level, you know, we always try and promote women's sport. I think it's important to do it, and when you have success like this, she just seems a very positive story. And this is what Katie Taylor has done. You know, I mean, she's created she's become an iconic figure that girls want to emulate, and I just think it's really positive, and you know, obviously the day that's in it probably doesn't get as much. I think you were saying, Tommy, it's mostly reports and stuff, but Eamon Sweeney does a nice piece, and he rounds it off. You said Jessica Harrington. Jessica and Kelly are sisters under the skin. It's some story, the tale of two Harringtons, a fairy tale, really, a fairy tale come true. And it's nice to read kind of positive stuff and with meaningful achievement, because there is sometimes a danger with female sport that people try to be seen to promote it without actually, you know, like it's kind of tokenism, whereas this is proper achievement and getting the credit it deserves, I think.
Yeah, and he quotes Kelly Harrington as well. There's a nice line I like. It's just something simple about the amount of support and help I've gotten off people has been phenomenal. If I can inspire someone to do something with their life or change their life, then that makes me happy. If I can change my life, they can do it. Anyone can do it. And she's just referring to the fact that she's coming from inner city Dublin, wouldn't have had it as easy as so many other, you know, a few minutes ago we're talking about how great it is, the amount of rugby players coming through the school system and how much support they have, but they have so much support, whereas you know, boxing, as we've always seen, has been a great way out for people, a great way for them to steer clear of trouble.
Yeah, and unfortunately still, you know, despite our achievements in it and in both genders now, still getting marginal coverage. You know, I think there is coverage and she is on most back pages and supplements, but it's, again, as you say, it's two massive stories happening at the same time. I'd say very few media probably sent out to cover those finals, and very little TV coverage, unfortunately, as well. And working for a TV company, I can't really, criticise too much about that, because look.
But there's an element of chicken and egg here. Like we had the Rugby World Cup here, the Women's Rugby World Cup here last year, and it became trendy to tweet about it and go girls and hashtag this and hashtag that, but they weren't going to matches. I think the aggregate attendance for the whole tournament was 42,000 or something like that, whereas the ladies football final, one game, that was over like 17, 18 games. One game ladies football was 45,000 or something. So I think people are, I think the line at the time was, they're happy to get their thumb out to tweet, but get the finger out and go to coach or go to matches or get involved, rather than just be, do the PC right thing. So there is an element of engaging more that way,
And like, just as Katie, someone like her, I mean, it's worth 1,000 columns and pieces by the likes of us, talking about it. I mean, like, just transformative stuff, as you say, like even how she speaks and what she represents.
Yeah.
Just absolutely.
This will inspire girls to take up sport, which is, and it'll inspire more coverage as well, which is.
Yeah, like it's a second world medal. She won silver 2 years ago, but I did see on a couple of papers she was quoted like Tokyo is the target. There's no, she is 29 now, so she's probably hitting that peak of her career, and she wouldn't have got to go to the Olympics while Katie Taylor was around, because she was fighting at light welterweight. Katie was the lightweight. And there was no light welterweight division in the Olympics, but now she's very much in that arena now, and she is the pin-up girl for Irish boxing.
Yeah, and absolutely justifiably so. Like, she's been a brilliant boxer for most of the last decade in terms of internationally, and Katie's, outshone her a little bit, obviously, in terms of because she's just like an absolute icon. So it'd be great now in the next couple of years to see her really getting that sort of, as you said, people who can open a back page.
Yep.
I mean, if she gets to that level, it would be great.
Before we wrap up, guys, is there anything else you'd like to
just the GA? Like, it's a tough time of the year for GA.
It is, yeah.
Club finals being played in winter conditions and all that, which is another issue. But the piece in the Times by Dennis Walsh, like on the one page, and it's in the other papers too, you have the farcical mixed with the progressive, because you have this rule, which I still don't really understand, about you're not allowed to gather in groups.
Oh, yes.
The Leash were penalised for
they took a trip to Kerry, I think it was.
Reaching a training camp. I can't get my head around this whole, you cannot gather. I presume it's about player welfare and all that.
Yeah, it was to keep April free for clubs, but as I think John Sugar, the Leash manager, kind of pointed out in his defence, when they were asked did they breach it, he came out and said, yeah, we breached the rule, but here's what we did. We left these free. There was 3 or 4 weekends where all our players played their club matches. We'll hold our hands up. But I think the problem is that there seems to be a bit of selective punishment, that themselves and Wexford and I think 2 other counties have been punished, and 17 counties were investigated.
Yeah, and obviously, Dublin's historical trip to the battlefields of Flanders and Normandy landing spots was not a training camp or exercise.
Whereas the Wexford hurlers went to was it Portugal or Spain, and Lee Chin it says here, he argued vociferously that this wasn't a training weekend, it was team bonding.
Yeah.
That wasn't accepted.
Were they talked out in Noble Beach kind of thing?
And I think Sugar says as well that next time around they go to Kerry, they might as well collect receipts from Daniel O'Connell's birthplace to ensure we have a historic purpose as the main aspect of our trip.
Yeah, I think Dennis used the line about rules being observed more in the what's the phrase? The breach than the observer. Honoured in the breach more than the breach than the observance.
Yeah.
Most of these, and he touches on as well the payment under the table, how little actual,
And the great story I liked is he's talking about Mick Mackey. I don't know if you said this. He says the great Limerick hurler Mick Mackey had a weakness for soccer matches, but it clearly wouldn't have been in Limerick's interest to suspend him. In a grand gesture of expediency, they made him a member of the local vigilance committee in 1940, making it his duty to attend soccer matches and search of wayward Gaels.
That's great. Yeah,
it's one of the
ways around it.
That is actually genius.
But I think it is significant. Like, no, it's again the day that's in it, it's getting marginal coverage. But these rules that were endorsed, this is like football has been horrible to watch, and this looks really significant. That the sin bin, like I could never understand the black card. You're going off for being a scallywag, but we're bringing someone on. So fellas could take a guy out when they get tired and bring on. So the sin bin makes complete sense. I know they tried it a few years ago.
And what'll happen now is what happened with the sin bin was tried it in the league and a cacophony of managers came out and decried it, and it was just...
There'll be 8 sin bins
but
in
if
one
this
game.
if this goes ahead and says that they're looking to bring it in again 2020 vision, but they're looking to bring it ahead in 2020, this will change the sport. And the 3 hand pass rule, you have to kick the ball out. Like that's... If they could sort out the tackle as well, I think the tackle is an issue, you know, kind of a... Maybe bring in the one they used in compromise rules, so people will get the ball away rather than the slapping thing and, you know, when you're free, that kind of concept. But I think this is really positive. And could actually, obviously football had a horrible year, but this could actually really pick things up.
But the criticism or the question that people have about it is that you can tinker with lots of rules, but is it not just a mindset thing of coaches? Is that the tactical evolution has been? It's almost like, you know, the famous Jonathan Wilson's famous history of soccer tactics is called inverting the pyramid, because soccer started with
all the attackers up
10
at the
forwards, and 2 defenders. And it's gone the other way now, and you have one up front, and sometimes none, and everybody at the back. And is that just what's happening with Gaelic football? And because it's hurling doesn't lend itself to those sort of tactics. The football, you can get players behind the ball. Is it not always going to be? Well, they're not always going to be a counter-attacking sport, you know, and it's not just a.
They have an attacking mark here as well, and the sideline.
The mark is one that came in last year that did actually. It was relatively successful.
Yeah, I think people's view of the mark was, you know what, that's successful. Hasn't fundamentally
changed the game dramatically, but it was just a nice tweak.
Yeah, it's rewarded long kicking and catching, and means that you've an incentive not to kick it short, and you've an incentive to try and get possession further up the pitch, and then that means you can turn that into a quicker attack, which is something that teams flooding back don't necessarily
Granted, there's a lot more still to do to promote the attack.
I think it's really absolutely interesting.
I think history might show that the day that guy put the video up on YouTube there was a Derry Club game or something. And it's like 5 minutes of half past, and that was the day that saved Gaelic football, I think.
Yeah, it was, because even I remember the day after, on off the ball here, it was wall-to-wall coverage just about that. There is fundamentally a crisis in the game.
Yeah, and that's the thing of where you look at it. Like, is it a mindset thing? Will you always have coaches who'll do that? And you look at hurling and says, well, you can't really do that in hurling because you can just knock it over the bar and you just keep taking your points, and so people have to come up with a different approach. Like, will these rules, it's like the offside line in soccer where you have at least space in an attacking sense. Will these rules create a balance towards tilt the balance back towards attackers and attacking teams versus defensive teams? That's the big question.
If you're going to lose a guy to a sin bin, you're going to cop on, aren't you? And it's going to create more space as well, so hopefully.
Right, guys, we're out of time, unfortunately. Would have loved to get through even more, but there is great reading, in particular on the soccer and rugby situations at the moment in the Sunday papers this weekend.
Really good.
Tommy and Hugh, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back after the break.